making plans for Nigel.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to you about a recent road trip that I did in the Kona Electric. When I do these videos, I do like to share my thoughts and experience, not just what I've done. So this video isn't particularly about having done a 390 mile road trip in the Kona, 190 miles from Norwich to Cheltenham, and then 190 miles back from Cheltenham. And obviously having to charge when I was down there. It's not just about having done that because, well, that's a bit silly, isn't it? 380 miles in the Kona Electric isn't a big deal, and having to charge away from home isn't a big deal. Yeah, it is to me, I suppose. It's the second furthest distance that I've travelled in the car, but there are many people doing a lot more than that, a lot longer distances, and it's no big deal. So, what am I trying to share? Well, let's get to some of the detail. The first was my stupid fault as a bit of a plonker. I had about 28% charge in the car the night before, and there was me thinking, perfect, I can set a timed charge and the car will be nice and warm. The battery will have warmed up through all that charging through the night and be ready to go at 9:30 the next morning. So that was the plan, 100% charge, off we go, loads of range in the car to get there. I wouldn't have to bother charging. The way I work it is, the worst I've ever seen in the car is freezing cold in the morning and raining when we headed to Brighton last year, again in the winter, and we achieved about a range of 210 to 220 with 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour. I'll put the European conversion on the screen for you. So I look at worst case scenario, and if I'm within that, I'm absolutely covered. Whatever the weather is, whatever happens, I should be fine. So I had 28% charge, woke up in the morning at 5:30, popped down to make a very early cup of tea, and noticed on my smart meter that the car wasn't charging. And ran out to the car, plugged it in, and noticed that I'd left it on Eco Plus. Or Eco Leaf, the zappy setting for optimizing solar. My own stupid fault for not doing it in a more simple way. And I've had lots of other advice from people saying I should set a boost timed charge on the zappy itself and not use the car. And yeah, my problem is I'm a fool to myself. I try to optimize things, I try to do things efficiently. I'm not like a lot of EV drivers where you get the electric car, when you arrive home, you plug it in and you charge it back up to 80% or 100% every single day. I leave it. I don't charge it. I like the idea of not charging it, and that causes me problems, as in this case that the car should have been charged the day before till 80%, and that way in the morning I'd have only had to have topped it up to 20%. I wouldn't have even needed to have done a time charge. I could have just popped outside and turned it on. And when we left, which was later than planned, I left just before 10 o'clock, we'd actually got to 73%. So even without the time charge, I'd managed to add enough to it for me to think that I could do the trip without charging. The car said we had a range of 228 miles, and when you turned the heater on, that range went down to about 220, 219, 220. So yeah, my thought was we're doing 190, that's 30 contingency. I know that the range the car is telling me is based on better weather and more local journeys, so I'm not going to get quite as good as that. So it was going to be touch and go. I had already planned with ZapMap and PlugShare, the apps that I use, that there was a charger in Buckingham, a Tesco charger halfway, and that was an ideal opportunity. Well, actually more than halfway, so it's about 100 and, off the top of my head, this is 120, 130 miles into the journey. So that was my contingency. If the efficiency was a lot worse than I'd expected, then I could stop. There are chargers on the way. I could even pull over and look at ZapMap or whatever and try and find another charger. So I found a few actually at Cheltenham that I wanted to charge because I needed to recharge the car completely for the return trip home. So I'd found a few that I could use. But we were staying at a hotel that had a Tesla destination charger. The lure of getting a free charge at the hotel meant that I was actually avoiding charging. The more I charged en route, the more I tried to find a rapid and put electricity in the car, the less I would gain from a free charge on the Tesla charger. So again, trying to optimize things, trying to be efficient, being a fool to myself, I was giving myself more headaches probably than I needed because I was passing effectively chargers, passing them up and deciding not to charge. When I was driving initially in the first 100 or so miles before I got to the Tesco charger, I I realised that it was a perfect road trip, a perfect example of a fake news story. So you could have, the Daily Mail or Guardian, Independent, whatever newspapers they are that we often see these articles, and they're absolute rubbish. You can tell that the article has been written at home, the conclusion's been written before they even went. They're basically saying, let's show that electric cars don't really work and the charging infrastructure isn't ready. So let's borrow an electric car, let's make it an e-Golf with only a 120 to 150 mile range, and then do a journey of 250 miles and see if we can get a charge. But only try the charges that we know it won't work at, and that way we'll have a really good story saying it doesn't work. And that was what sort of happened to me. I knew from my personal experience where all the charges were, but on the actual road that I was driving on, I was conscious that there was only one charger on the actual road that we were driving on until we got to this Pod Point 7 kilowatt charger out of Tesco's in Buckingham. And that one charger was an Ecotricity charger, and as we passed it, I actually got an alert on the sat-nav screen showing me that the BP petrol station that had the Ecotricity charger and a Starbucks next to it, that was coming up in just a couple of miles. So I decided, you know what, I've never tried Ecotricity. I do slag them off and say they're rubbish based on other people's experience of failed chargers, especially with CCS. So I've never been encouraged, and I've always said I would never go to an Ecotricity. Well, I'm literally passing it, and actually I could do with a 25% charge just to make it more comfortable. And somebody's told me that they're often free at Newmarket because it's got poor reception and signal. So I thought, do you know what? We've got time. Why not just try it? My first experience was it was an awful car park. It was extremely busy with the BP and the Starbucks. It was filthy. It was disgusting. It was a real motorway service. It was heavily used and there wasn't enough space. It was a tiny little car park. And the Ecotricity charger didn't work. Failed to initialize. And I tried it 3 times and basically decided there is absolutely no point in trying to call anyone or try to do some extra resets. It just didn't work. So yeah, that would make a perfect fake news story, wouldn't it? Because that was the only charger from there until when I got to Buckingham at over 100 miles that was available on that route. So you could argue that the infrastructure is awful. The infrastructure is absolutely rubbish in this country because there are no chargers on the routes you want to take. There are chargers on motorways. Most of them, again, Ecotricity. And most of the chargers are off route. Now, the thing that I would like to say is my thought is, yes, that's a perfect fake news story, but what's the reality? Well, the reality is, if I'd have charged fully, I didn't even need a charge. So electric cars are so good these days with modern, longer range electric cars, you don't need to do that charging on the way. But when you make a mistake, yeah, I might have had to actually charge up at a local charger to get myself there. That would have been a more practical thing to do, and spent the time in Norwich where I knew where the charger was and just get there. But I didn't do that. That's where I think the problem is with electric car charging, that garages and petrol stations are visible at the roadside and there are plenty of them, so you see them. Electric cars chargers are not. Now, why isn't there on all the A roads at junctions where you can turn off to find a rapid charger? Why isn't there an information sign pointing us to rapid chargers? I don't think it needs to point us to 7 kilowatt chargers or the destination chargers, etc. But rapid chargers, yes, it should do. There's no on-road information to help direct us to where we want to go. So we have to use sat-nav and our mobile phones. Well, it's not really actually practical that on the sat-nav in the Kona, it does show you where all the chargers are, and a lot of them are current, using live information, but most of them aren't. Most of them are just car garages, the Hyundai garages, Renault, Nissan, BMW, and if you go to those garages, it's a bit hit and miss actually as to whether they will let you have a charge. Some garages are really good and will move whatever car's in the way because they're often blocked, and they'll let you have a charge. Others will say, well, you're in a Hyundai, what are you coming to Renault to get a charge for? No, you can't use our charger. As I was driving along en route, I could see where the chargers were. They're appearing on the map, so I could then touch the symbol on the map and it would come up with the charger details. I could click then information and it would tell me the details of the charger, whether it's 7 kilowatt or whether it's a rapid charger, whether it had CCS or Cheltenham, all those sort of things. And using live info, it would actually tell me whether it was in use or not. Now, the problem is, on the Kona and the sat nav that's in it, most of the chargers that I want to use aren't on that map. And most of the chargers that come up that are visible are all 7 kilowatt chargers at car garages, as I said. So by the time you've gone through 3 or 4 chargers that you're driving past and you're not seeing any information of a rapid charger that you want, you're spending more time looking at the sat-nav screen than you are looking at the road, and that's not really good. I shouldn't be interacting with the screen that much. So in reality, I'd have to pull over, know that I want a charge, go and look at an app or the sat-nav in more detail. Now maybe there are better apps out there that I could use, but I really don't want my mobile phone on a holder on the windscreen as well as the sat-nav. And yeah, Google Maps does a really good job instead of the car. And I would like to use Google Maps and Waze more often using Android Auto. But I have a problem with my phone and car combination that Android Auto doesn't work. Since upgrading to Android 9 from Android 8 on my Huawei phone, it cuts out. And I've tried multiple phones. I've tried my old phone and it doesn't work either. It cuts out, so it's just not reliable. So I can't use those other services on the main media screen. Using an app to find the chargers while you're driving isn't really ideal. That's the sort of information that we really want going forward, that they're just not visible. So it's not whether the infrastructure's there, it's the visibility of them, I think, is the issue currently. And that was my thought as I was driving along. I was conscious that it was a perfect fake news story to say how rubbish the infrastructure is, whereas the reality, as you can see from these maps from ZapMap and PlugShare, that there is an abundance of chargers. What I found with those apps, though, is that they were directing me in routes I didn't really want to go. They were predominantly taking me on motorways, they were predominantly taking me on routes where there were lots of chargers. Where the route I wanted to go was, I wouldn't say rural, off-piste sort of road. It was A roads and B roads and taking in a few country villages. Yeah, it was more scenic. And on the roads that I took, which were the A47, A11, A14, because they're the major routes I had to take to get west where I was going, I then took the A428 and the A421, and they're more single carriageway for a lot of the journey. And then a few B roads as I got closer to Cheltenham. I think I took a little bit of the A40 or A44 as well. So I weaved across some of the major roads, but actually took a very direct route to get to Cheltenham. So it's less miles. For me, I would rather travel a longer time route, but a shorter distance route, because that's better for efficiency. It's better for enjoying the drive of being able to take in more of the scenery. I don't like just zooming around motorways and all I'm looking at is traffic. So for me, I'm not using service stations and I'm not using motorways. So my experience of charging will be different to somebody that's just up and down motorways all the time and know that at services there are chargers. So there's my thought as I was going down about the charging infrastructure. But what happened when we got there anyway? We found the Tesco. It was a new site for a new charger. And yeah, it was easy enough to find, I suppose. I did recognise the sign in the corner of the car park. I think sadly you have to head to where the entrance of the shops are, because they often put the chargers close to the entrances, which is bad for the charge spaces being iced, as this one was on multiple times while I was there. But it was a perfect stop for us to use their toilet, to buy something in the shop, to have a coffee, have a snack, have a rest. You know, we'd done 120, 130 miles. We'd been on the road a few hours. It was a perfect time to stop. And we didn't add much charge, 4% in total, 17 miles is all I added. So was there really any point in stopping there? This is, I suppose, the issue, that I would rather have stopped at a more scenic picnic area so we could stop and have a coffee, because we'd actually taken a flask of coffee, so I had a coffee with us. I'd rather have not stopped in a Tesco car park. But because there's a charger there, I could add just a few kilowatt hours and that would add just a little bit of contingency. I knew I was running potentially tight, so adding that extra charge was something I wanted to do. So for me, I would rather have charged from home to 100% and not stop at all at anywhere that has a charger, and just stop where I wanted to stop for a coffee. And that's one of the things that annoys me, that I see a lot of EV enthusiasts encouraging people to say, you know, you only need a smaller range EV because you need to stop for a break anyways. You can stop to have a charge. Well, that's great. But why do you have to stop at a place where there's a charger? Because those places aren't necessarily nice places to stop. So if all you care about is you want the charge because you need the charge, then you have to stop at a service station or a messy Starbucks like there was with this Ecotricity charger. It's not what I want. I want to stop where I want to stop, somewhere pleasant. And the only place that I've seen that seems to match that is Scotland. Scotland seems to have some charging locations in some fantastic places where you can literally stop for a rest, a break, look at the scenery and have a charge. And down south where I am in Norfolk, they're not. The chargers are just in convenient places for the road and for road trips, and that's not what I want. I want to go from A to B and just enjoy the drive and stop when I want to stop to have a rest. If there's a charger there, I can take use of it, but I don't really want to have to go to where a charger is because they're not particularly pleasant places to stop. So that's why I think larger battery, long range EVs work well, because you can do what you want to do and drive how you want to drive and not be dictated by where the chargers are or how often you have to stop. And that's my argument for saying why I think having a larger range, longer range EV works. Now, of course, what you're talking about in reality here is people that are used to small range EVs, smaller battery EVs. They promote them because they make them work and they like them. I've bought an EV and it happens to be a long range Kona Electric, and I've only got that experience. I haven't owned a lesser, smaller battery EV. So of course I promote what I know and what I think is best, which is a longer range EV. And you've got that contrast. People that are used to smaller batteries say they're fine, you don't need a bigger one. People that have got a bigger battery would say, I don't know how you'd ever survive with a smaller one. So you've got to listen to both stories and work out what's most appropriate for you, I guess. There's me conscious again that I'm waffling some more, so let's get to the detail. I added 17 miles. We then left the Tesco's and drove on to Cheltenham, and the efficiency in the Kona Electric starts to go down and be more accurate and precise when you get below 100 miles of range. So yeah, the range was reducing, and I could see that it was reducing beyond where the initial indication was of range when we set off. So instead of having a total of 220 mile range, it was looking like we were going to have more like 200 miles of range. So it was going to be much closer to running out to empty than it looked like when we first set off. So adding the 17 miles of range did help because it just gave me that little bit more comfort. So we arrived with 30 miles of range left. 30 miles is absolutely fine. It's great. It was 12% on the car. But that was with adding 17 miles, adding 4%. So without having that Tesco stop, we would have arrived with only 17 miles and 8%. And I achieved 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour. It was me mostly driving, not Susan. Susan's typically more efficient than I am. We did have the heater on, and the temperature was not close to zero, but it was more 5 degrees that we set off in, and it was raining. So with a wet road, you get more resistance on the car. The air is damper and thicker. So yeah, that's why we got 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour. On the way back, we had 100% charge. We were at a Tesla destination charger, and I charged up to 100% overnight. And also, I did try out a Polar Rapid. We went to Cheltenham Racecourse, and there was a Polar there. I'd always avoided Polar because I thought of the subscription system and the RFIDs that you needed to be able to activate them. I never really liked the idea of Polar, and I just wanted to go to a charger, turn up, tap my debit card, pay for the fuel, and off I go. I want it to be simple. So I used to avoid Polar chargers. So while one was there and while we had time to kill, I thought, come on, let's just try one and see what it's like, because now they've got to have payment cards on them to take instant payment. That's supposedly the new law that's come in, or new rule that's come in. So I thought I'd try it, and I swiped my card a few times to get it to authorise, and it did. It worked absolutely fine. So just using a debit contactless card, the Polar charger worked absolutely fine. The charge rate I got started at 39 kilowatts and went up to 47 kilowatts. So a nice rapid charge from their Ultra charger. And yeah, the racecourse chargers, nice location. So long as they're open, which I don't think they are 24 hours a day, but you are allowed in the racecourses just to charge. And the Jockey Club is installing these chargers in all of their racecourses. So it's another great location. So I only added, I don't know, how much did we add? I think 5 kilowatt hours. It was 30 pence a kilowatt hour. £1.50 minimum charge. So I had to add 5 kilowatt hours as a minimum for the charge, and I added more than that, £2.20 or something like that. I can't remember what exactly I added, but I wasn't doing it because I wanted the charge, because I wanted the free charge from the Tesla destination charge. So I was just doing it to experience a polar charger. And I guess that's another experience thing, isn't it? I'm a fool to myself because I don't drive the sort of distances where I need to charge before I come home again. I'm always able to drive wherever I'm going and drive back and charge at home. I don't have a huge, great experience of charging on different types of charger. So while I'm out, it does help me if I take advantage of trying something that I haven't tried before, just to become more familiar with it. Because the more familiar you are with it, the less worry you have, less anxiety you have. And now, for example, I can include Polar Ultra chargers in my list of chargers I'm happy to visit. So I'm happy to go to Alpha Power, Engenie, Instavolt and Polar now. I will add all of those to my list. Yeah, again, I'm being awkward on, I'm being stubborn. I'm not giving them my bank details. I don't want Swarco, Instavolt, Alpha Power, Polar. I don't want all of those companies to have my bank details, for me to have a password and a log on to all of them. Because over time, one of them's going to lose my information, and then I'm going to have to change my passwords, and I'm going to have to remember logging on, and one of them will have a problem, and my bank details will go missing somehow. I don't want that. My bank details are private to me. I shouldn't have to give them to a charging company to buy electricity from them. I should be able to do it on site where the charger is, and that's how I want to interact with chargers. So yeah, I'm a stubborn old git, and that's how I want to use them, and that's how they work best. Now, yes, they can be cheaper, and I don't mind that. I don't mind if they have a subscription club, give them your details, have monthly billing, and get cheaper electricity when you're charging. That's great. If you want to take advantage of that, that's a great facility, but that shouldn't prevent me from being able to charge on site, paying for it on site without giving you my bank details. So on a social note, what were we actually doing in Cheltenham at the Cheltenham racecourse? Well, it was a dog agility event, or a dog hoopers event. Hoopers is like a new version of agility, where dogs go on like an assault course, a play assault course, and they are timed of having to do the course in a certain way and a certain time. And Hoopers is the new one that we're doing that we find Cracker enjoys more. But while we were there, for Cracker, also staying at a nice hotel, making a nice weekend away of it, and enjoying ourselves. So yeah, we stayed at a lovely hotel. I definitely recommend it, the Ellenborough Park Hotel. The service there is fantastic, the food is exceptional, and there's a Tesla destination charger there too, which is available not just for Teslas, but there is a white connection too, which works for anyone with a Type 2 connection on their EV. That leaves us with the trip back. So same sort of routine. I planned contingency where we could charge if we had to, but of course, knowing that I was going to get a full charge, there was going to be no hassle whatsoever. The car said 298 miles is what we could achieve, or 290 with the heater on. So that was from 100% charge overnight. So having set off, I drove for probably the first 100 miles, and then Susan took over, and in that 100 miles I achieved 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour. And the weather was, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 degrees warmer. Instead of being about 5 degrees, it was closer to 10 degrees as we set off. So the warmer weather probably helped the battery warm up and stay warm for longer. So the extra efficiency, another, at least 10%, if not 12% increase in efficiency on the way back, could have been the warmer weather, or it could have been that it wasn't raining, or it could have been a combination of those things. It wasn't just me being more economical. It was the environment and the road that we're traveling on. And maybe we even had a tailwind, who knows? But everything added up, I was getting 4.8. After the 100 miles or so, Susan took over and she drove the rest of the way home. And as always, she beat me. She is so much better at efficiency in the car. And the way she does it, from my observation, it's just how she pulls away from junctions and pulls away from situations where you've stopped. She's much more gradual on the throttle, where I don't floor it, but I don't hang around either. I get to the speed reasonably quickly, where Susan doesn't. She's slower to build up speed. And that seems to make a big difference with efficiency. And we achieved an unbelievable 5.3 miles per kilowatt hour. Again, I'll put the euro kilometre equivalent on the screen now. For winter, for, you know, a December trip in the UK. Okay, it wasn't raining, and the temperature was quite mild, I guess, for December, but 5.3 was a really, really incredible result. And I think as an observation, that sort of shows the issue that we've got. On the way down there, I couldn't get any more than 4.3, and it's clearly that the battery isn't warming up enough to be efficient, or the rain and the air density is affecting it significantly. The combination of those two things are making the efficiency not quite so good. So in summary, what I'm talking about is in 5 degrees, 190 miles, me driving, I get 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour. In the rain, coming back, I get 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour when it's not raining. So for me, that's the difference on how economical and smooth I drive. Because again, I'm not driving at 70, 75 miles an hour. We're driving on muddy country roads that you would be mad to be driving at 60 plus miles an hour on. One, because it'd be illegal, because they're single lanes, single roads. But two, with the mud and the leaves on the road, really sensible speed is 50-ish. So I do get better efficiency driving on those roads and driving sensibly. And by the time we got home, the range left on the car and the distance travelled indicated that it was a 300 plus mile range capable car in December with the heater on, and that is a phenomenal result. The car is amazing. So for me as an EV driver, yeah, I've learned some more. I've taken in my first Polar charger. I've made my first actual attempt using an Ecotricity charger. I'm not going to go on and rant about it. They just don't work, do they? So I've also learned that I must stop being silly about charging the car. If my car's sat there with 28% the night before I want to go out somewhere, I'm a fool if I don't charge it up to 80% before the evening charge. So I must stop doing that and start just charging the car during the day before, and start keeping it at a higher percentage level. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for sharing these videos. And if you haven't subscribed already, go on, subscribe. I'm getting close to 5,000 subscribers. It would be great by the new year to be closer or even reach 5,000. Thanks again for watching. See you again soon. Bye-bye.